Hello everybody and welcome to parksbros. It's Drew here, and today we're back in Rolling Springs in Planet Coaster for our third episode in this semi-realistic park set in the Rocky Mountains underneath the Cedar Fair and now Six Flags chain. I'm not gonna lie, didn't have the most amount of time in the past week to get to customize some more things in the park, and some of the inspiration kind of was not really there for me this week, unfortunately, but it's all good. I got inspired by building a new area of the park. You can actually see some changes already as we're walking in, and we'll go through the security real quick. See this wonderful little welcome sign, walk into the park, and I've actually added a goodbye sign on the back. Not sure if I'm going to keep that there, honestly, right now. I might move that over to one of the sides over here. But the first thing that you'll see as we get a look at this wonderful front entrance, as usual, is the brand new Fest House. And I might change this because, yes, it is pretty much just ripping off the Fest House names of multiple parks across the U.S. But realistically, it is just a large area, kind of a multi-purpose room, if you will. There will eventually be tons of tables in here, but definitely very German styled, and you can get all sorts of food, drink, and even stage productions, which eventually I will flesh this out a little bit more, because this is just going to take a lot of time in comparison to the overall skeleton of this building. But I thought it was kind of nice to pull some thoughts from Disney, actually, in what used to be the Pinocchio restaurant in Fantasyland and eventually became Red Rose Tavern. There's a lot of interior exteriors, if that makes any sense. So there's tons of what looks to be buildings on the exterior inside. It's kind of like the same idea with the Venetian in Las Vegas or the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas as well. But yeah, definitely very inspired by plenty of different parks, including Kings Island, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, but it's just realistically a giant room that has food and some shows. This also includes Six Flags Fiesta Texas, and I've actually been inside that one, unlike the former two that I mentioned. But yeah, I might move this one a little closer to the main pathway just because it does feel pretty disconnected at this point. There will be a bunch of park services on the left-hand side. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do with this giant wall. I just put it in there for the sight line right now. I'm not sure how I feel about it, so that'll probably be changing pretty darn soon if you ask me. But let's go ahead and keep walking through the park past the giant Ferris wheel. And if you guys have any names for any of the rides that haven't been named yet, or potentially any lands that haven't been named yet, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts as we head to the right-hand side of the park and introduce ourselves to Roland Timber. This was the ride we created last episode in, well, at least before time-lapse, before we built the station in time-lapse. I have updated that a little bit. There is this cool pathway that will go underneath, and there will be a couple of carnival rides and potentially an amphitheater over in this space is what I've decided on. I think that's going to be really, really cool if you ask me. But as we keep walking around, we'll see some swings, some spoilers for what we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, just have to flesh this out just a tiny bit more eventually. Here's the front entrance. You can see it gets a rating of 4 out of 5 in terms of like how experienced of a rider you should be. But let's go ahead and just walk through the queue line real quick for some of my favorite assets that I've ever seen in the Toolkit Mist fans. Now, I will say they're technically just fans, but I did add the mist in myself, and I absolutely love how it looks. I mean, just look at how it is when it's playing. It's just perfect, and I've added that throughout the line. I don't remember if I talked about that in the last episode, but very, very basic queue here. Definitely want to add in some more shade. Didn't end up getting the chance to do the transfer track properly over here on Roland Timber. Still debating whether we call it Green Streak at this point, but we'll get to that eventually. Now, here's where a majority of the work starts for what I did in the past couple of days at least. This is our B&M dive coaster called Vampire. Probably would have opened very close in time to Valraven, like at Cedar Point. And I might have gone overboard with the theming a little bit. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. But the track is actually straight up right on the other side of this wall here, and it gets pretty cramped if you ask me. So I did have to add this wall in just for safety's sake. You can get a cool look at this 0G roll right there. And as we keep walking through this pretty heavily forested section, which I would assume was already here before this dive coaster decided to pop up, as well as this ride right to the left here, Bad Apple. I stumbled across this color scheme and I was like, you know what? It looks like a bunch of apples that are swinging on a tree. Super simplistic cue for it as of right now, but yeah, I thought Bad Apple was kind of cool. I can maybe make it Brat Green as an ode to Brat Summer. I think that'd be kind of funny. But yeah, I'm totally enjoying how this troika is looking right now. Definitely just got to add some shade and more plant life to split these two areas, like the boardwalk section and of course this mini land that will be connected somewhat to the fairy tale Kitty Land that will be to the right hand side. But yeah, walking through, it's just looking absolutely phenomenal. I'll actually let it play right now so you can get a chance to look at how everything is moving and how all the kinetics feel. But this B&M dive coaster is pretty insane looking. It's called Vampire, and I tried to allude to that as much as I could with a lot of influence from Six Flags Fiesta Texas and maybe an ode to X2, which we'll see in a little bit as we get a little bit closer to the ride itself. But yeah, it's looking absolutely insane with lots of plant life out towards the entrance itself. And even a B&M test seat, which I gotta say, as we move towards it, is so cool. I love that as an asset. But this is Vampire. This sign is completely a ripoff of Poltergeist at Fiesta Texas, if you did not see that already. At least the similarities for it. But let's go ahead and just walk through the queue. This might be a little bit too themed, in my opinion. I think this might be overstepping the bounds of what Cedar Fair and Six Flags typically does. However, Fiesta Texas has a ride themed fairly similar, their Log Flume. It's a pretty nice castle facade as well as interior, and it wouldn't be the worst thing to have one ride that's a little better themed than most of the park. And super simplistic, honestly, on the interior. It's just the walls themselves are a little bit more detailed than usual. You can see some ode. I have to move this pad up pretty soon. But you can see some odes to the idea that this was a vampire's castle as we walk through. We'll walk through again at nighttime. But yeah, pretty simplistic corridor here to lead us to the outdoor section, which of course is a graveyard. But you get an amazing view of that first drop and first inversion. Actually, we can speed up time real quick and have that come down. It looks insane, honestly, from this angle. As you can see some of those fire effects. But yeah, I'm really enjoying how this is all starting to turn out. Just still a little bit worried about how themed this all really is. And you can see this is a total ripoff of Banshee's Queue. Super simplistic, just a couple gravestones, maybe alluding to some of the old rides that no longer exist. I mean, there's that Son of Beast monument next to Banshee. I will say another thing that I'm kind of worried about is the fact that these trees are so big at this point. If this is a newer ride, even Banshee doesn't have fully grown trees around it, and that ride's 12 years old now. So I'm curious if I'm going to change that. I might sink some of these trees even further into the ground than they already are, just because they're so big in comparison to what they probably should be right now. But let's go ahead and head up into the station. Now, up in the station, it is moderately themed. Yes, there is a little bit of an opening ride sequence, but it's pretty much a giant mausoleum with a couple of sarcophagi, however you say it, and of course that main vampirical coffin in the center. Really enjoying this as the trains head out. The coffin opens, there's some lighting effects, maybe even a sound of lightning. I'm enjoying it a lot, though. I think it's pretty cool. It was a nice little getaway from where we've been with, you know, a classic wooden coaster, a surfing coaster, South America, and even a beer garden, pretty much. I'm really enjoying, though, the fact that there is a lot more foliage over here already. I've kind of gone all in with trying to make everything look as green as possible around the ride, just to add to it a little bit. As at this point, I think it's a good time to start looking at everything at night. Alright, everything's looking beautiful at night as usual. Still have to do a lot of lighting changes all around the park, but it's nice to have these flat rides all lit up. Now, this ride will definitely have to have tons of lights in the future, especially around the zero-G roll. I think it'd be a really cool photo moment. This troika really adds a lot of color, and I'm really excited to see how all this is going to look. But as you can see, that flame effect really stands out as we head into the queue with a little bit of a cool nod to the vampire gargoyle on top. Just looks a little bit more menacing as we head inside to what the lighting should actually be whenever you enter in the daytime. So definitely super dark, super mysterious, but that's exactly the look we want to go for. As we'll head up to the station yet again, you can see a bright red light right there, and it looks like we might have come at the perfect time, potentially, to see some of those dispatch effects. Or maybe we were a tiny bit early, potentially. Let's go ahead and skip forward a little bit, see if that helps anything. I do have it as a minimum dispatch interval of 35 seconds, but there you go. Definitely have to add the sounds in still for like a shock of thunder and a couple other things. But yeah, I think it's looking absolutely amazing. And speaking of which, I think it's our turn to hop on. So let's hop into front row, take a ride on Vampire. So there you have it, the first POV of Vampire. Obviously, we have a ton of work to do all over this park still, but I gotta say that the fact that Midsummer Scream just happened, I think, inspired me to go diving into some scarier themes all around, and I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out thus far, and I think adding some of the more classic ideas around the ride will actually help it blend in a little bit more. Even just having Bad Apple, that Troika ride next door, it looks kind of out of place next to it right now, but it adds into the history of the park and the fact that this would be a newer attraction. I even thought about potentially having that castle that's up front that's themed after the actual Dracula castle in real life, whether that could have been potentially a haunted house or something of that nature in the past for the park, or maybe like just a spooky walkthrough attraction that eventually just became part of the queue for this brand new ride. And that's why it's a little bit better themed overall, at least on the exterior, in comparison to that station building, which is pretty plain. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about all that? I'm curious of your thoughts on everything thus far. Vampire's looking really great. I can't wait to come back with hopefully some more content next week with more done on this park, potentially starting on the kiddie area maybe. That's where I'm kind of hoping to go at this point because I would love to work with some of the fairy tale themes now. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this quick little update for Rolling Springs, and I hope you're excited to join us on stream on Twitch as well. But of course, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.